is up, everybody? Welcome into episode 23 of I'll Say This with Chris Castellani. I am your host, Chris Castellani. Got a good show lined up for you. Much Tigers talk here. And I'm recording this. Tigers just finished getting swept by the New York Yankees in a series that drove me nuts, but mainly a final game that drove me absolutely insane. And that's where we're going to start. And right away, hey, ownership is ownership. After the Tigers won 4 out of 5 on Thursday against the first place Twins, I came on this show and said, all right, this team stinks. They're 9 games under 500. They're not very good. But let's see now. You know, you got a tough series coming up against the Yankees, but I'm seeing the gears turning. At bats look a little bit better. Pitching speaks for itself. You know, Fetter's doing an amazing job, and you have Skubal, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. So if you go to New York, you win 1 in New York, hey man, I'll tip my cap to you, right? It might, you know, even if it's ugly or what, if you win, I'll be relatively content. The Tigers did not win 1. The Tigers got embarrassed, and I said in my postgame video yesterday, as much as people want to hate the Yankees, and I have enjoyed hating on the Yankees too in the past, those games matter more when you play in Yankee Stadium against New York. Like they just do. People pay more attention. The Yankees are probably the most recognizable team in all of professional sports, so it means a little bit more. And the Tigers played 3 games. And in the first game, Garrett Cole was brilliant. I'm actually going to talk a lot more about that game in the later segment because I have an interesting question for the fans, the listeners out there. But look, Elvin Rodriguez, rookie pitcher, tipping his pitches, amazing breakdown by John Boy. I mean, 8-minute video where he broke down how he was tipping his pitches, just amazing stuff. You get popped, and as I said yesterday after the game as well, that should be every game. The one area that I brought this up before, the one area that is exempt of criticism is the starting pitching staff because of the injuries. It doesn't matter how good you are. Right now, there are 4 pitchers in this 5-man rotation who should be in AAA, and some of them miraculously have looked pretty good. Ronnie Garcia, I thought, was good on Sunday. Bo Brisky was good on Saturday. And the bullpen's been pretty rock solid for the most part this year. So you go to Saturday's game. Bo Brisky, first pitch of the game, gives up a home run to Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is on some kind of heater right now. And I hate to say it. I mean, like, it's hip to hate him, I guess, but I love Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is one of the most amazing baseball players I've ever seen. That guy is just a specimen. You know, and he's just been hitting the absolute crap out of the ball. So you lead off the game with a home run. You're down 1-0, as this team has been so many times throughout this season where they just can't seem to get ahead in a baseball game. Bo Brisky then responds 6 innings, 2 earned runs in a hitter's ballpark against a lineup that's been seeing the ball really well. That's a pretty remarkable effort. The bullpen gives up 1. Joe Jimenez completely lost his command in that last inning. Chafin was able to shut the door. You lose 3-0. You get 1 hit and you draw 1 walk. So essentially, and I'll talk more about Cole in a second in that game, you almost have 2 no-hitters thrown against you. Like, they had no chance of scoring a run on Friday's game. They had less of a chance of scoring a run on Saturday's game. So you've lost the first 2 in the series. It's annoying. The offense is awful. You get shut out through the first 18 innings. But you go to game 3. And Ronnie Garcia, I thought, was pretty sharp. That sinker plays. I mean, he might be all right. I mean, I think he's probably more likely to be a long relief guy than a starter, but not too bad. You get an early lead. Then you give up a 2-run home run to Joey Gallo. Man, that sucks. Joey Gallo's been awful this year, and yet somehow, you know, I'm not going to say bad luck. I mean, he turned on one, but it's frustrating. But you are in the game. You are in a competitive ball game, and because you got killed the 2 previous games and didn't really use any of your best relievers, it lines up well for you to potentially win the 3rd game of the series. So Alex Lang comes in. Credit to AJ. He used Lang against the heart of that order in the 6th, brings him back out for the 7th. You have Gleyber Torres on first base. Now, I will note, Lang did not have his best command yesterday. In fact, his command was poor. I mean, at some point, he walked in a run with the bases loaded on 4 pitches. Though shouldn't have happened, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But not his best outing. I'll acknowledge that. But you got Gleyber Torres on first base. You have 1 out in the inning. Ball gets hit to the shortstop. Gleyber Torres is attempting to steal second. So, Baez fields it, looks at second, checks the runner, looks at first, and just doesn't throw the ball. You give a good team an out, essentially. You refuse to take an easy out. It's going to come back to bite you. And that's exactly what happened. And Alex Lang ultimately ended up walking in a bases-loaded run, and the Tigers fell behind 3-2. Now, in fairness to the team, for once, the offense showed a little bit of fight, and they got 2 back in the top of the 8th inning. I'm like, wow, you got 2 back in the top of the 8th inning, and you got Fulmer and Soto coming in the 8th and 9th. You might, against all odds, despite how bad you've played, how poor this offensive has looked, you might actually win this game. Fulmer hits Rizzo on the foot with a curveball. Poor pitch selection, in my opinion. That slider looked solid. It was playing up in the zone, bizarrely, but they weren't really barreling it up. Sinker was fine. Fastball was fine. Why you go to the curveball there, I don't know. You hit Rizzo on the foot. He goes to first base. Then the shit show really began. And I'm sure people listening to this might be bored because they watch the game. The people who listen to this are Tigers fans. But I need to beat for beat recap every single second because that game drove me more nuts than any game that I've watched this year. Anthony Rizzo, who is known for being a relatively athletic first baseman, a great hitter, power hitter, great leader, World Series champion, and cancer survivor. I love Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo is known for many things. He sure as hell is not known for stealing bases. He goes to second, and Eric Haas, who has struggled so much this year and who I think at some point soon is going to be sent down, quite frankly, makes a throw to second base. Good throw to Jonathan Scope. Probably this team's best defender. It's between him and Tucker Barnhart, but I think among all active players in terms of outs above average, he's actually been number 1, or at least he was as of a week ago. Perfect throw, goes off of his glove. Now, part of that is on the pitcher. You got to check the runner there. I understand that. But Rizzo goes to second, Scope muffs it, and Anthony Rizzo goes from first to third. Anthony Rizzo is not a speedster. Anthony Rizzo, I think himself would admit he's a very slow runner. I think anybody with eyeballs and a brain would admit that Anthony Rizzo is a pretty slow runner. Ball gets away, and Anthony Rizzo does something that nobody on the Tigers is seemingly capable of doing, which is somehow creating problems on the base paths. Goes first to third. Next at bat, ground ball to third base. Harold Castro at third base fields it. Harold Castro did not start that game. Jeimer Candelario did, got injured. Castro goes home with it. Bit of a slow roller. That's a play that needs to be made. That's a play that every good third baseman, every good catcher in baseball is able to make. You should have gotten the out at home, and you didn't. Guess what? Tie game. You got a tie game, not because they were hitting the ball, not because they were mashing home runs. Tie game because of walks, hit by pitches, and errors. That is the definition of poor baseball, in my opinion. But despite all of the nonsense, and it was nonsense. Oh my, that was the angriest I've been watching Tigers game this year. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was still a tie game. You still have an opportunity to win. You go to the 10th inning. You start with a runner on second base. And you have Derek Hill who leads off. And this, I don't hate Derek Hill, for the record. But this at-bat was a reflection of every single thing that I hate about the Tigers and their player development when it comes to hitters. People forget this. But there was a time in which the Tigers believed Derek Hill was going to be their Mike Trout. Derek Hill, I believe, was drafted in 2014. He was considered this 5-tool player. The Tigers had conversations about, dude, who is a better athlete? Who's a better 5-tool player? Byron Buxton or Derek Hill? And while Buxton has struggled with a lot of injuries, at his peak, he's been really darn good and really darn effective. So you have a guy that at one point was your can't-miss prospect. And 8 years later, with a runner on second, Derek Hill strikes out, not because he swung and missed at 3 sliders in the dirt like Javi Baez, but because he fouled off 2 bunts. That's the second time this year that's happened. Now, I understand bunting is a lost art form, but Derek Hill does not hit for power. Derek Hill doesn't really hit for average either. Derek Hill should be good at 2 things: manning center field and getting a fucking bunt down. There is absolutely no way in the known world that 6 years into a rebuild, your first-round pick should be striking out on bunts. And guess what happened? The next 2 at-bats, I think Willie Castro struck out on a changeup that 3-hop to the plate, and Spencer Torkelson, your other can't miss, guaranteed, we lost 114 games to get this guy, struck out on 3 pitches. He's won for his last 19. Had a good series against the Twins. Besides that, he has a negative WAR on the season. He's one of the worst players in baseball. And I could say forever, I think Torque will turn it around. But quite frankly, I'm a little bit done talking about what next year is going to look like. I'm a little bit tired of talking about what Torque's going to look like in 2-3 years. Because you know what we talked about 2-3 years ago? What this team was going to look like 2-3 years from then. And it's been 3 years. And they are every bit as awful as they were 3 seasons ago. That was a game on Sunday. I said this in my post game. That is just a reminder of, like, why in the world am I even, like, I love my job, and I'm going to continue to make these videos, but, like, I could be, I don't know. I wouldn't be doing anything else. Like, I act like I could be doing something greater. I'm not going to. You know, I am stuck to this team at this point, but the way they lost that game on Sunday was, oh, my goodness. I still can't believe it. After I upload this, it'll be Monday when I upload this. I still can't believe this. There's just no reason they should be this bad. There was no reason they should have been this bad 3 years ago. And it just continues. I hate it. I hate it so much. This is not a baseball segment anymore. This is a personal segment. I hate this more than anything in the whole world. And as much as I say I'm done, the sad reality is I'll be sitting on my couch watching Tuesday's game. That's the worst part. I wish I knew how to quit you, and I can't. All right. This is probably going to be Tigers exclusive, but this will be a much lighter, less passionate, less angry segment, because I have an interesting question I wanted to pose to you, the people. On Friday night, Gerrit Cole was pitching against the Tigers, and he was absolutely dealing. He looked as good as I've seen him probably since he was with the Astros. Tigers were losing at the time 12-0, and Gerrit Cole had retired the first 20 batters that he'd faced, and the 12-0 score is very important to mention here, and I'll explain why in a second. Perfect game with 2 outs in the 7th inning, ultimately lost it on a Jonathan Scopes single. Cole was still brilliant, 7 scoreless innings. But in that moment, in a 12-0 game, 1-0 game, hey, let's rally, let's get some guys on base. Tigers don't score 13 runs in a week, so they weren't going to score 13 and beat the Yankees on that night, especially with Cole on the mound. But in that moment, I looked at one of the premier pitchers in baseball, the highest paid pitcher in baseball, in Gerrit Cole, a Yankees team that is having the best season they've had since they won it all in 2009, a Friday night ball game at a capacity crowd in Yankee Stadium, and I said to myself, you know what? As much as I love my Tigers, I kind of hope he finishes this. We haven't seen a perfect game in baseball in 10 years, and there was a vindictive element to that because I'm like, good, stick it to this terrible Tigers offense. Let the world point and laugh at you. But that had more to do with what Cole was doing. Cole was just brilliant. And it begged the question, and it's a 2-part question. Is it ever acceptable to root against your own team? And the second part is, if so, have you ever done it? Because, yeah, the game was out of reach. Again, if it was close, let's rally. But it was done. The game was completely 100% over. And I'm like, dude, I kind of hope he finishes this. And I was trying to sift through my Rolodex of memories, trying to think of an instance in which I rooted for my team to lose. Now, I cannot think of an example. There has never been an example in which I wore like another team's colors and was like, yeah, I hope my team loses. I've never done that. We're going to exclude tanking here because I feel like that's really easy. I rooted for the Pistons to lose so they could get Cade Cunningham. Yeah, of course you did. I rooted for the Tigers to lose so they could get Spencer Torkelson. Well, yeah, a lot of people did. I did too. We're going to exclude tanking. We're going to talk about teams that had something to play for at the time. And I could think of one example. And it was the last year of the Brady Hoke era at Michigan. Michigan's 2014 football season was just such a disaster. They were 5-7, but even beyond that, every week was a different story. You had the Shane Morris concussion incident. You had Frank Clark getting kicked off the team for domestic abuse. You had that stupid instance in which I think it was Joe Bolden maybe driving the spike into Michigan State's turf, but right before Michigan State dog walked him. Like, just a terrible, terrible season. And they were 5-6 going into the Ohio State game. An Ohio State team that ultimately went on to win the national championship. And I was just so done with Brady Hoke being the head coach at Michigan that there was a big part of me that's like, you know what? I kind of want them to lose this game simply because I don't want there to be any discussion about whether or not Hoke should be coming back here next year. Now, Hoke was a dead man walking. I think even if they win that game, they probably let him go. But if they win that game, they would have had... if they win that game, Harbaugh doesn't get hired. Because the reason Harbaugh got hired when he did was because of the fact that Michigan did not make a bowl game that season. He got hired in the middle of December. If Michigan wins that game, they're 6-6. They play in a bowl game. Hoke is still the coach going into the bowl game. So in that moment, that's the one instance that I can think of in which I'm like, dude, just let it go. Just I lose this game. I'm done with it. Other than that, I can't think of many examples, but I want the people in the comments, whether on Twitter or on YouTube, to let me know, because I've actually heard some interesting ones. I do think it is acceptable sometimes to root against your team if you feel like a victory in the present could drastically affect the future, the way that, Michigan beating Ohio State in 2014 would have, potentially. And again, I don't want to hear I was rooting for the Tigers to lose game 162 because they were a game away from getting the number one pick. I mean, like, meaningful games, somewhat meaningful games in which you were playing for something other than pride. A radio host in the state of Michigan once told me that in 2014, he was rooting against the Tigers when they were in a race against the Royals for the AL Central. He thought that Tigers team was so similar to the previous teams they'd seen. No bullpen, unathletic, kind of a team that's most likely to spit it up in the postseason. And he had this Royals team that made contact, ran the bases well, played great defense. And he said, I like the Tigers, but I've kind of just fallen in love with this Royals team. I hope they win the division in 2014. I want to take like that, because I don't think you're a bad person for feeling that way, truly. Fandom is a bizarre thing, because you don't owe your team your support. You choose to support them. I mentioned this when I talked about the Pistons. It was probably about 2 months ago on this show, where I'm like, I got to a point where I'm not rooting against them, but I'm done rooting for them. They've done nothing for me. Like, go away. When they get good again, I'm not going to act like I should be at the front of the bandwagon, but I'll jump on and root for them. The Red Wings have been the same way. So yeah, I'm interested to know people's thoughts here, because I find it very interesting. Yeah, so real quick, for the people listening out there, I had filmed and recorded this entire program. It was done. It was in the bag. And I was listening back to it, and I think the substance of what I said in these segments was fine, but there's two things I try to avoid with this program. Number one is exclusive Tigers talk. And number two is overwhelming negativity, because I think what you run into is the possibility of getting overly repetitive. I find that annoying. I want people coming back to this because of the variety. And so I was like, dude, what do I do? Because I wanted to try to get a guest, but the fact is having been somebody who's been a guest on other people's podcasts, I don't like it when they're like, dude, can you do a show like tomorrow? Well, no, dude, I got a week of stuff that I got to plan out. So I'm doing what I consider a common man segment, in which we feature the introduction of Canadian Josh. I don't know if I'm going to use this, and I don't know how people are going to respond, but Josh is a good friend of mine. I think he's hilarious. And so I'm going to interview him. Well, he hasn't jumped on yet. He's about to, but yeah, for the people out there who are still listening to this show, enjoy this upcoming interview with my friend Canadian Josh, and we'll see how it works. Okay, people. So as promised, we have a surprise guest here, and I don't know how this is gonna play. I really don't. It's gonna be bizarre probably to a lot of people, but I need some context here. So, like, this is Canadian Josh, by the way, for the people out there, friend of the program, friend of mine. And it's one of those rare internet stories that doesn't end with somebody being a weirdo or a creep, because you and I became friends through unconventional methods on the internet like 5 years ago. And so much has changed in that time. Schooling, housing, where we've lived, professional, different jobs. There's two things that haven't changed. One, the Leafs still can't win a playoff series, and the Tigers still can't win a game. So we've continued to suffer through the same relative nonsense over the last 5 years. But I call you Canadian Josh because it's a great moniker. We became friends because you're essentially Canadian Chris. Like, you are what I would be if I was nice, friendly, and Canadian. Like, I've seen you get pissed, but your pissed is like 5 out of 10 compared to like where I was. Like if anybody watched my post game video after the Tigers game on Sunday, people know. So like I mentioned it in my previous segment. I wanted to do something kind of unconventional here. And hey, the theme of Barstool, the original foundation of Barstool Sports is by the common man for the common man. There are not two schlubbier common men than the two that are in this segment right now. So first of all, how you doing, man? I mean, I know you Blue Jays just had a difficult game and a difficult series, but you seem to be doing all right. How are things going for you, man?
Oh, I can't complain. Now on the biggest stage, I'll say this.
Oh, and, yeah, the biggest of stages, Josh.
Of course.
Yeah, you got
maybe I'll try Super Bowl, but I've already made it. Actually.
I appreciate it. And in the previous segment, I'm going to drop a question because Josh and I talk like all the time. We Skype all the time. I have vented more after Tigers games to you than probably anybody else that I know. And I have seen your Blue Jays ascend as my Tigers have both descended and then flatlined for like 6 years. But the segment that I did before I talked to you is a question that I wanted to bring up and ask you, because on Friday night, we talked about this on Skype as well. On Friday night, Garrett Cole was 20 up, 20 down against Tigers. And it was a 12-0 ball game. And I bring up on the show that there was a part of me that was like, dude, I kind of hope he finishes this. And so It's a two-part question that I asked the audience. I'm now going to ask you. One, is it ever acceptable to root against your own team? And two, have you ever done it? Now I brought up on the show, excluding tanking. We're excluding, we want to suck.
Okay, so we can get that is a pretty big exclusion.
That's a huge, but that's so easy though. Cause like what Pistons fan didn't like want the Pistons to get a Cade Cunningham, right? I'm talking about a team that had something to maybe play for, whether it be, like sneaking into the playoffs, winning a division. Has there ever been a time in which you rooted against one of your favorite teams?
I would say during the end of Mike Babcock's tenure with Toronto. I don't know if I ever got that far, but to have the Detroit connection in there, I try my best.
You literally just hit a home run there, because it's like I guarantee you there's going to be a million people who are going to be like, "Fuck Babcock." Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Toronto is a very, very interesting place to coach, and I don't envy a lot of the people that have come through here. Carlisle being a big one that I didn't like, but like I never really had a huge issue with him. But Babcock, I had such a massive disrespect for, and towards the end, I knew it was him on his way out. So a couple games there, close to the very end of his tenure, when he got fired mid-season, I was like, you know what? If they drop it tonight, I'm not going to be that angry.
That's a perfect choice, and I think these two are comparable, not just because of the Detroit connection, but and I didn't use this example on the show because there was a tanking element to this as well. But Osmus, the latter part of his tenure, big surprise. We've known each other a long time at this point, where it's like, I've talked about this with Jim Harbaugh. I generally don't care if the coach/manager is a nice guy. Like, so what? I mean, like, give me a guy who's a complete douche who's winning 90% of his ball games and we're in a good spot. But with Osmus, it got to a point where like, I need you to keep losing because I just don't like you. Now, one thing that you've gotten into, and this is a sign of a true friend here, is you're shocker, Canadian. Josh is Canadian, but you've gotten into Michigan sports, mainly University of Michigan sports, since we've become friends. And you picked a good time to do it because, like, you remember 2020 when our football team sucked, and then you got into it and we actually won. What's your assessment of the obsessiveness that comes with college sports and like the religion that comes with, especially like Michigan's such a perfect example too of that, of like what do you kind of take out of just the passion that comes with college sports, especially North American stuff?
It was very jarring for me growing up because hockey's massive here, obviously. Mm-hmm. But our college sports essentially up here is major junior hockey, which is not college. It's, they're their own separate leagues. And college sports in Canada, both football, hockey, it's pretty non-existent in terms of fandom. So it was very weird for me as I like maybe got 13, 14, started like paying attention to American sports, seeing people go bananas about like people who are barely adults playing sports.
Like me. That was before we knew each other, but yes, I fit that demographic for sure. Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I learned like just how truly absurd the Auburn Alabama rivalry was and just not getting it. Like simply not getting it. But now that I've kind of tried my best to immerse myself in the culture, I get the like it's much easier to have like a communal aspect around college sports. Like a lot of non-sports fans, when you talk about like if you say like we when talking about the Tigers, oh, we lost today. There's a lot of people, sports fans and non-sports fans, have a huge issue with that. They hate it. But like a lot of like Michigan fans actually went to Michigan. So it's different. It's harder to make that
not this guy, but yes. I gotta point out to people watching this. I am wearing a Central Michigan shirt right now. So I'm literally fitting the mold of the Michigan fan that everyone hates. But you are correct in your assessment, obviously. Yeah. So you're a Blue Jays fan. You're a huge Toronto fan. You're a Canadian guy. And I think part of the reason why we bonded when we first met around 2017 is that we saw two teams that had bottomed out. I mean, I think that your 2017 team in Toronto had some kind of expectation, but it ultimately, like, you got off to that horrible start. You guys are like 2-11, like, which is like the worst place to be. Like, there's nothing worse than 20 games in being like, we are the Tigers and Blue Jays probably kind of hit the reset button right around the same time, I guess. And look, you've had your frustrations with this team. You're not a huge fan of Montoya. I think that the offense, dead ball, could have something to do with this, but the offense has probably not been it definitely has not been nearly as dominant as it was a year ago at this time. But I guess we've talked Tigers a bunch. We talked Blue Jays a bunch. What is it about your rebuild that's worked, whereas ours has not? Because it is as frustrating as this team may have been at points for you. Like, Josh, I would hit somebody with my car to be 9 games over 500 right now. Well, like you guys are in position to be in the playoffs. We'll see if you catch the Yankees, but like, why is one worked and the other hasn't?
I think quite a few reasons. The Jays, the new management coming in, not popular at all. Even though Anthopoulos' tenure, and I was a fan of Anthopoulos, but we're not quick to point out the flaws in it. So the new regime coming in, not very popular among the fan base overall, but they've done the majority of things really, really well. They've actually spent money. Word on the street is that Mark Spiro has done a very good job fostering a relationship with the ownership and actually getting them to pony up. They signed Springer, they signed Ryu. They've done just enough in that like wheelhouse to like get us to a competitive spot. They've done a really good job with international free agents. They like got Beltre, who people are like really hyping up, among like so many other guys. We can go down the list, just look up the top 30 prospects for the Jays. Plenty of them will be there. And their drafting and development has just straight up been better than Anthopoulos has been. Manoah skyrocketed through the minors. He is so good. We talk about him all the time, but I just want that guy is I'm not going to put him as the favorite right now. Nestor Cortez probably the favorite. Sure. That guy's a wrecking ball of a pitcher, man. I mean, and was he? I know I've asked you this before. Was he a huge, highly touted prospect for you guys? Because I remember when we talked, and we still talk obviously quite a bit, but Nate Pearson was your big, like, that was your Casey Mize. That was your 100-mile-per-hour fastball. This guy's going to be number one ace. And then Manoah, was it out of nowhere, or what were there those rumblings of like, yeah, dude, this guy's well, he was a high first round pick, right? Okay, so there was always that like air of optimism around him. I remember as he was coming up, a lot of people somewhat justifiably were talking about like, oh, is the breaking ball going to play at the major league level? He had a lot of really fancy strikeouts in AAA that a lot of quote unquote very smart people were like, won't work at the major league level. Now that has been proven wrong, especially this season. Especially his last start, teams have not been able to square up a slider like at all. And it's a big reason why he's in the Cy Young conversation. So yes and no, there was the talk about, is this guy a bullpen arm long-term? And I think that's been quashed pretty quickly.
Yeah. The international free agent thing is very interesting to me because we've seen you guys hit with it. We've seen the White Sox hit with it. We've seen the Astros, obviously, with guys like Altuve, and then we've seen the Nationals, Juan Soto. I don't understand unless it's just severe cheapness. But when you look at these guys, like Jose Altuve was signed for $50,000. Like that's a parking ticket for some of these owners. I don't understand the trepidation for the Tigers, because to me, that accelerates rebuilds. That even if you sign 5 of them and one of them is really good, you're in a good spot. Look at, the Rays don't spend it all. Wander Franco, international free agent. Luis Robert with the White Sox, international free agent. I think that's one thing outside of the fact that they don't develop hitters at all. That's just a huge problem with Detroit. That's one thing that gets overlooked, is that it feels like there's a trepidation to make a move on guys internationally. Now they've got Campos, who's coming up through the system, but again, we're so deep into this that it creates just so many annoying issues. I proposed something to you yesterday, Josh, that ties into a Tigers related thing, where John Boy did a breakdown of Elvin Rodriguez tipping his pitches against the Yankees in a 13-0 game. It wasn't Glass now in game 5 of the ALDS, tipping his pitches and getting popped. It was a kind of a meaningless game, right? That video got sent to me about 60 times. And I appreciate it. Have you seen this? Of course it did. Have you seen this? And yes, I saw it. And I did. I didn't have much to say, so I just quote tweeted and said incredible stuff, which is John Boy does that. But I made a proposal to you yesterday, and I think it speaks to the power of one guy and the problem with another just franchise that is Major League Baseball. I think John Boy is the face of baseball. And you came back and said you think that's an original and kind of unique take, but I think when you break it down, the average fan, and we are not average fans, we are the weirdos who pay attention to spin rate and exit velo and who sing the praises of a pitching coach. But I think the average fan right now is more likely to stir up conversation talking about a John Boy breakdown than they are to talk about Mike Trout. Now, part of it is Mike Trout's team sucks and they've lost 11 in a row and just been back-to-back innings, blew a game in spectacular fashion. But I guess my proposal to you with that is that good or bad for baseball that a content creator may be the most influential person in your sport?
I think it's fine in a vacuum, but when he's bar none the face for casual fans and for non-baseball fans, that if someone likes football and basketball, maybe the young up and coming sports fan in America right now, football and basketball, if they're going to watch any baseball content over the last 2 months, it's a John Boy video. And I brought this up yesterday in our conversation. John Boyce, I believe is how it's pronounced. He also can get the non-baseball fans to come to his stuff, but he uploads way less. He's not as visual. John Boy's there every day. It's his whole life.
I think that they've really, understandably so, have pushed Ohtani, and last year had maybe the greatest individual season, the most impressive individual season ever. I think that Judge should be the guy, because and people will hate it, but the New York Yankees are the biggest brand maybe in sports. It's not quite as, Michigan isn't quite as there, but it's kind of similar when people complain about Michigan football getting national TV games. The Yankees will always be the Yankees. I'm sorry. They just have that built-in brand. It's a completely different sport in terms of action and availability. But at the same time, I remember, and a lot of it was local, but Justin Verlander's on commercials all the time. I remember Verlander when he was in his prime in Detroit, local ads, Subway, charities, he did a Wounded Warriors Foundation thing where you saw his face all the time. He was on Conan. He was, kind of a big deal. I view him as kind of this generation's Mr. Tiger. I feel you don't necessarily have that with Major League Baseball, and you run into a lot of issues. And I think people use the whole, the language barrier thing as kind of a cop out sometimes. Cause one of the big, it was before your time. One of the big marketable athletes from my early days was Yao Ming, and Yao Ming got drafted #1 overall by the Rockets. At the time, didn't speak any English, but he was on Visa commercials and they made it work. I think that it's more so the personality and the person that it is whether or not,
and Ohtani is from what we've seen in the dugout, and a lot of that is John Boy videos to bring it back around.
Yeah.
He's a very fun guy.
He's hilarious.
Yeah. Put him in front of cameras. I wanted to, I'll give this a bit of a Canadian angle here, because Sidney Crosby suffered a lot of concussion problems coming out of his prime. Well, the concussion problems were him coming out of his prime. He was amazing. Then he went through those head injuries and he kind of took a step down. And even though he missed a bunch of games and he wasn't the player he used to be, and he wasn't a very interesting person as a whole, I would say I'll walk that back. Very interesting person, not like a guy you would consider like a boring hockey type, right?
He doesn't. Yeah, we're not talking about, like he's not. He doesn't have like Chris Pratt's charisma, I think is what you're trying to say. Like interesting person in terms of their career, but yeah, like not the most marketable. Yeah,
sure. But despite that, because he was so well known, he scored like the big Canada winning gold in 2010 goal. They put him on Tim Hortons commercials. They put him on commercials ever. Like the list of companies is absurd. He was still a big household name in Canada. They found a way to market him. So there's no reason why the MLB should be let off the hook for, they're not really shown a lot, and they're not like very interesting people. Like other leagues in the NHL, for the most part, is very, very not good at this, and they still found a way to make it work.
Yeah, I've always found it. We got a long ways from this happening. I mean, right now, I just want to get through a game without making a few errors. But
sure.
If the day comes where there's a Tigers Blue Jays ALCS, and it's game 7, bases loaded, and let's say, I can't imagine this guy will be on the roster considering how he's hit. Javi Baez swings and misses at 3 straight Jordan Romano sliders off the plate, which is, the customary at this point. And the Blue Jays go to the World Series. You celebrate. Is there any part of you that's going to feel bad?
Of course. So that's the nature of sports, is you have to step on someone's head to get to the top. Feeling bad is one thing. Like, I think you put the feeling bad in like this little box and you store it in the back of your brain, and it's there and you want to touch on it every once in a while, but you keep the majority of your brain open for drinking and celebrating because the Jays are going to the World Series.
That's the way to go, right? Yes. You nailed that perfectly, because my thing, I know exactly how it'll work. Now it'll be, if it's the Tigers coming out on top, we'll both be, we'll be in wheelchairs at this point. But at the same time, here's what's going to happen is I'm going to message you. And I'm going to say, hey man, great series. And I'm going to put it in my back pocket and I'm going to get sauced and I'm going to celebrate. And I'm going to go nuts. And it's going to be the next day when I'm recovering from the hangover where I'm going to be like, feel bad for Josh. Now I will feel less bad. Let's say you guys get one first. If you get one first, and then I'm going to be like, you know what? You've had yours. Like you've got your one. That's why I never feel bad. Like when the Cubs blew that division lead in 2018 and they're like, oh, I can't believe that. Or when they traded Javi and Rizzo and Bryant, it's like, you got your one. Like I'm so done with this team didn't become a dynasty nonsense. Like I would kill for one. Just give me one right now. So no, I was thinking
very much.
Yeah. What's that?
So we're both in that boat very much.
For sure. Like people don't understand. I kind of went off about it in my post-game video on Sunday where it's like, people don't understand like the difficulty, you guys have recovered from it. Like you're there, the wheels are turning, but like with us, where it's just like the difficulty to win one game, the idea of a World Series right now is science fiction. But the list will be the last question. And I don't think I'm putting you on the spot necessarily. Okay. But we talked Barstool for years, well before I got hired by Barstool. We had a bunch of different takes, and takes were fluid. We had a bunch of different opinions that have changed over time, definitely changed since I got hired, excluding me. Your favorite Barstool personality?
Oh, geez. That is a good question. I would say, as a Packers fan, as a very new Packers Michigan football fan, which a lot of people take issue with.
People are typing on their keyboards right now, Josh.
Yeah,
so
a lot of people
get used to this.
That, but I've been a Packers fan for about a decade now, and I would say having Big Cat tweets on my timeline with the Chicago Bears is just beautiful every single time. I feel for the man, but is there anybody funnier while losing? No, I don't think so.
He's so good with that, and I'm sure he hates it. but he has it's a different mentality because like our losses I put on video in frustration. There's something about the silent pain that comes with that, where it's all you need is he's been gift more than anybody at Barstool, like the silent pain, frustration look I remember when they did, that stupid dumb Bird Box movie that came out on Netflix. There was that one of those internet challenges, the Bird Box challenge. And they did it when the Eagles played the Bears in the Cody Parkey game. And I don't think Big Cat was blindfolded, but I remember there was just this. I love both these guys so much, but it was Parkey did the double doink, and you just saw Big Cat's head slowly fall into Eddie's shoulder. And it was like, you didn't have to say a word. And it's like that pain, that level of pain that comes with fandom is so unique. So yeah, man, I mean, I'll have to edit around some of this because I was stumbling over my words, but I appreciate you joining. We'll have you back on the show at some point. One of the reasons I brought you on outside of you being my friend is the fact that like this show, the first 25 minutes of the show is just me shitting on the Tigers. I'm like, dude, I got to do something that's like a little bit positive, because that's a majority of our conversations is just me doing that. So I appreciate you being on. We'll see how this plays. Hopefully people enjoy it. But either way, I liked it. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, no,
so, and literally there's an
outro or just
what's that?
Do you want me to do an outro of any kind or just sayonara?
Oh yeah, but where can we find you on Twitter? I guess.
Oh, well, you can find me on Twitter at AnnoyedJoshua, and that handle pretty much encompasses how I am.
I was going to say, you have the most aptly named Twitter handle, I think, of anybody in the world. And you know what's ironic, dude, is we might end up talking to each other later tonight. So it's like, this is not, it's not like some long, it's like that with Anthony too, where I want to avoid these long outros because it's like, it's disingenuous. I'm going to talk to you like 5 minutes from now. So yeah, appreciate you, buddy. Follow him at Annoyed Joshua. Post-game videos after every Toronto Blue Jays game. So if you want the alternative to my absolute frustration outside of the Leafs, which who you also do the post-game videos for, you got the Blue Jays that are on the up and up and have been for a while. So I appreciate you joining, man. Talk to you later.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, thank you to Josh for coming on. Yeah, I enjoy our talks. I hope other people enjoyed our talks as well. Before we officially end the show, I do want to throw out a few programming notes here. Programming note number 1, and this actually isn't really a programming note as much as it's a promotion. On Wednesday night, I will be on my buddy Justin Spiro's show. Justin is a guy I've known. Is 5 years a long time? 5 calendar years? I think that's fair. That's a fair window. Known for a long time. And we're going to be doing a snake draft in which we draft Michigan and Michigan State basketball players, 8-man teams, starting from the beginning of the John Beilein era all the way up until present day. It'll be me. It will be Justin, who will be the host, obviously. David Klein, good friend of mine, does a great job covering Michigan State basketball. And, of course, Anthony Broom, who is my best friend and a friend of the program and former guest on the program as well. So I'm going to drop the link as to where you can find that, where you can listen to it, watch it on all the different social media platforms. But beyond that, this week, and I usually don't like this, but this week is my birthday week. I think birthday weeks kind of annoying, but at the same time, when you're doing it for good, I think that's somewhat acceptable. And if you've been following my Tiger postgame videos, you know that I've been doing charity shout-outs after every game. And throughout this entire week, starting on Monday, we're going to be promoting one charity all week. It's going to start on Monday. We'll end at the conclusion of the June 10th game against the Blue Jays. Then we'll go back to daily charity shout-outs. But Freddie Bella, who is a local Michigan-based pizza man, a man responsible for a pizza that Dave Portnoy once called the best pizza in Detroit.
One bite, everyone knows the rules. And let me tell you something. If we're just looking at that, oh, Barstool Sportsbook, number one. Yeah, this guy's greasing me up. This guy's greasing me up like a show pony. Oh, that crispy set. Look at that. I think this reminds me of Little Angels. Look at that undercarriage. I think no. Dave, be fair. Be fair, impartial, figure skating. Don't be the Russian judge. It is undoubtedly the best pizza in Detroit. Not even close. It's not even close. Frank, it's not even close. It is not even close as best. Is it? I said it kind of looked like Angela's from Philly. Kind of tastes like it. This is undoubtedly the best pizza in Philly. Hey, Philly, I'm Philly. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm like a fucking band guy going city to city. Sometimes I forget what city I'm in. Detroit. Best pizza in Detroit. I just found it. I found it. Freddie the Pizza Man, bar none, hands down. Now, I don't know if you like Detroit style. I don't care what style. This is the best pizza in Detroit. Period. End of story.
He has a child with autism, and he has a charity currently called Freddie the Pizza Man Foundation. I'm actually reading off some notes here, so forgive me if this sounds a little bit stilted. Freddie the Pizza Man Foundation was founded in 2016 with the sole purpose of helping and equipping sensory rooms in Michigan schools. Since then, we have bought over $70,000 in equipment in 42 schools in Michigan. We currently have 4 more on the list to finish and close to another $8,000 in equipment. Our goal is a sensory room in every Michigan school. To help, please visit freddythepizzaman.com to donate and see the list of schools completed. This is obviously an incredible charity, a local charity, and something that hits very close to home for me as somebody who's on the autism spectrum and as somebody who still deals with sensory issues and will continue to forever. I'll drop the link in the description, and I'll be promoting this all week. Donate what you can, and hopefully we can really help out a good cause. You know, I birthdays are birthdays. The older I get, the more I lament birthdays, and you lament the things you missed. But you can't look at things that way. You know, it's not healthy to look at things that way. You got to look at it in the sense of, you know, what else can you gain by getting older, and helping people always feels good. So yeah, I'll drop the link down below, and we'll be promoting that all week. But that will do it officially for today's show. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. While you're at it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. Let's get those watch hours up. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. Follow us, like us, review us on all of those platforms if you have the opportunity. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and happiness.